and of great destruction? How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. A sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How is Babylon become a desolation among the nations?
All right, welcome back. Want to reset, talk about where we are now and where we might be going next when it comes to Operation Midnight Hammer and the situation in Iran. So taking a look once again to recap what we did over the weekend. The U.S. attacking 3 separate Iranian nuclear sites. Isfahan, where they got a bunch of underground tunnels with enriched uranium. Natanz, and then the big one at Fordo. That is where we used 12 different bunker busters, waiting for damage assessments from those. But the question is, what, if any, responses are going to be from the Iranians next? Keep in mind, we've got about 40,000 U.S. military personnel sprinkled throughout bases all within the Middle East, going from Turkey all the way down to Qatar and the UAE. Remember, back in 2020, it was Al Assad Air Base in Iraq, where the Iranians decided to shoot ballistic missiles in response to the strike against Soleimani. Then down here in Qatar, we've got Al Udeid Air Base. That is our biggest base in all of the Middle East. That's where CENTCOM also has some of their headquarters. The question also, what's going to happen here on U.S. soil? The potential threat of Iranian sleeper cells. We've talked about the open border the last 4 years. Take a look at this data. CBP sources telling Fox News, from 2021 to 2024, under the Biden administration, just over 1,500 Iranians were caught by Border Patrol crossing the southern border illegally. Of that, almost half of them, 729, were released into the U.S. That is 48%. That also does not account for the more than 2 million known gotaways who slipped across the southern border during that time. For more on this and the potential threats to the homeland, I want to send it out to Mark Meredith, joining us live in D.C. this morning. Mark, good morning to you.
Bill, good morning to you. The FBI says it remains vigilant, and the Department of Homeland Security is warning there is a heightened threat given the developments in Iran. We're watching 2 potential types of attack here. The possibility, one, cyber threats to U.S. networks. The other, the possibility of sleeper cells targeting Americans here at home. Major cities, including New York, where you are, D.C. and Los Angeles, stepping up patrols near places of worship. NYPD also watching diplomatic sites around the country, around the city. And over the weekend, DHS put out a bulletin acknowledging the threat is real. DHS writing, multiple recent homeland terrorist attacks have been motivated by anti-Semitic or anti-Israel sentiment, and the ongoing Israel-Iran conflict could contribute to U.S.-based individuals plotting additional attacks. Some lawmakers fear the sharp influx of migrants into the U.S. over the last few years may have allowed Iran to send sleeper cells into the U.S. undetected. And as Bill mentioned, Fox learning many Iranian nationals detected crossing into the U.S. during the Biden administration were allowed to stay and not kept in custody.
O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. The Lord of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, Surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee.
There was no chatter.
Anna, I understand there was no chatter, but we still need to check all of the usual suspects. Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, Al-Sakar. Where are we with local law enforcement?
I've coordinated with D.C. Police, Secret Service, Metro, and Capitol.
All right, that's good. Now remember, the high-value target list only starts with the White House. We need to heighten security at every location.
Already taken care of. You taking that bomb to Andrews?
Yeah, top brass wants everything cataloged under one roof. All right.
Fortunately, they do have a right to be concerned. As you said, Joe Biden had a wide open border policy for 4 years. We know that terrorists tried to enter our country. Iran has a long history of terrorizing America going back 46 years, to include here in the United States.
In February, the White House warned of this very possibility. The national security team says Iran has also directed proxy groups, including Hezbollah's Islamic Jihad organization, to embed sleeper cells. And Bill, the threat extends beyond the obvious U.S. domestic targets. Military installations abroad, American diplomatic outposts all remain on high alert.
Mr. President, there's something you need to see.
Police imposing a curfew on predominantly Muslim neighborhoods and ordering residents to obey it or face arrest. These are citizens who have not been charged with any crimes, who are simply targeted because of their religious beliefs. The American Civil Liberties Union denounced the actions by Dearborn police as a violation of the citizens' basic civil rights. But in the wake of the attack on the Capitol, some are saying this is just the type of policing this country needs.
Governor Royce, how are you?
About as expected. There's lots of manage here, as you can imagine.
I know, and I want to help. I've seen reports that the police in Dearborn are rounding up members of the Muslim community.
Yes, I'm aware.
Well, like I said, we'd like to help you stop the police.
Why would I stop the police? They're acting on my orders.
Your orders?
That's correct. I don't know if you know this, but I have the largest Muslim population in the country here.
That doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong or that they've been radicalized.
No, but I'm willing to bet they know someone who is.
Governor, you can't target an innocent population because you're scared. You have a responsibility
To all my citizens. And my first and only priority is to make sure they're safe. Something that Washington, if there even is such a place anymore, has proven incapable of doing.
Governor, the federal government is more
than effectively snuffed out last night. There is no Congress, there is no Supreme Court. When it comes to the people of Michigan, I am the highest authority, and you have none over me.
With all due respect, sir, I am the president.
Not mine. So you'll have to excuse me, Mr. Kirkman. While you're busy learning how to become president, I've got 10 million citizens to protect.
Governor? Governor Royce, hello?
Yep, the issues at the border continue to echo with the situation right now. Mark Meredith, thank you. Good to see you.
Want to bring in Fran Townsend, former DHS advisor under President Bush. It's great to have you here. One of the things they did not mention is something that Iran is known to have some capabilities, but you could describe them, and that is the cyber capabilities. Could that hurt us here as well?
Sure. I mean, look, they've attacked U.S. critical infrastructure. They've attacked the financial institutions. J.P. Morgan suffered real damage. And so I think the private sector, too, has got to be on alert for retaliatory effects. I agree that we've got there's the potential for these sleeper cells that could be activated. But the FBI has the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, and the glory of those is you've got state and locals in there and DHS so that they're all working the problem together. This is not a new concern. And so I imagine long before the bombing, they were working to uncover sleeper cells.
Hello, sir. It's Agent Hubbard, FBI. And what I propose is that you let these people go, and I'll take their place. I'm going to take your silence to mean that you're considering my offer.
Oh, God.
London, Belfast, Beirut. We're not the first city to have to deal with terrorism. This is New York City. We can take it.
You don't understand. These guys are pros. From the age of 12, they've been dodging people like you.
The situation is appalling. They're attacking our way of life. The president wants it stopped, and there's only one way to do that.
Are you saying the president is prepared to take the necessary steps?
Today, with the invocation of the War Powers Act by the president, I am declaring a state of martial law in this city. We intend to seal off this borough, and we intend to squeeze it.
Do you have any idea what you're starting here?
It's wrong. What if what they really want is for us to herd children in the stadiums like we're doing? And put soldiers on the street and have Americans looking over their shoulders? Bend the law, shred the Constitution just a little bit. We do that, and everything that we have bled and fought and died for is over.
Don't you ever again question my command, is that clear?
I'm not under your command, General.
Take a look around, tell me if you really think that's true.
Switchboard just notified me that there's a call from an immigration detention center.
A woman named Maria Serrano claims you're a lawyer.
Yes. Okay, well, have him put her through.
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Kirkman, it's Maria.
Hey, Maria, how are you?
ICE got me arrested. I'm going to be deported.
Deported? What? My office? Well, it's not really my office anymore.
Duncan is now handling your case. Have you spoken with him?
Yes. He said there's nothing he can do. Please help me. They took my kids away. We cannot go back to Honduras.
No, I know you can. Okay, you gotta stay calm, and I'm gonna get into this right now. Okay, Maria?
Does the president expect the governor to just bow down?
Carter, it's been 7 days since Al-Zakar took credit for bombing the Capitol. When can the American people expect a response?
The president is busy meeting with his advisors and working up a strategy.
Can you be any more specific?
Not really.
But the president does have a strategy.
Of course he does. I mean, he's the president, isn't he?
So how's it going here? That depends. Does Kirkman want a second term?
Please just let me answer the question. I can assure you that the White House takes the situation most seriously.
you
I do think the people the most at risk for a physical attack are our bases overseas and diplomatic institutions.
And when it comes to those concerns about potential sleeper cells, when I was down at the border, I met a lot of Iranians, and most of them seemed like pretty nice guys. They'd come up to the cameras and they spoke English. They said they wanted to flee the regime. I think a lot of the concern has to do with the gotaways, right? More than 2 million over the last 4 years. Those are people we never saw on our cameras. Those are people Border Patrol never caught. Those are people who paid the coyotes extra to get away from law enforcement.
That's right.
What are your concerns about that population?
So that's exactly the focus of the Joint Terrorism Task Forces, because you've got state and locals there who are closer to the communities, who have sources in the communities and can feed into the federal system that can bring resources to bear. And so I take some comfort in the fact, the other thing the FBI brings with them is access to surveillance capability. So you can use the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. This is really what it was intended for, and to gather intelligence to identify those cells.
Take us to the region. You know it very well. One of the things here is that Israel had degraded the capabilities of Hezbollah and Hamas. Okay, so we have that. But there are other players in the region. President Trump was there 3 weeks ago. I think that those relationships helped in this situation because, as far as I can tell, they're being very quiet.
Right. Look, I think the long-term view in the region, I've spoken to 2 leaders in the region, is this is good for their security. They don't want to attract attention because they're so close to Iran. They don't want to have short-term or medium-term ballistic missiles falling on them. But they support quietly, to your point, Dana, the action that the president has taken. It protects not just Israel and us, but the entire region and the world.
Mm-hmm. A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. For 40 years, Iran has been saying death to America, death to Israel. They have been killing our people, blowing off their arms, blowing off their legs with roadside bombs. That was their specialty. We lost over 1,000 people, and hundreds of thousands throughout the Middle East and around the world have died as a direct result of their hate. In particular, so many were killed by their general, Qasem Soleimani. I decided a long time ago that I would not let this happen. It will not continue. I want to thank and congratulate Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. We worked as a team like perhaps no team has ever worked before. And we've gone a long way to erasing this horrible threat to Israel. I want to thank the Israeli military for the wonderful job they've done. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the great American patriots who flew those magnificent machines tonight, and all of the United States military on an operation the likes of which the world has not seen in many, many decades. Hopefully, we will no longer need their services in this capacity. I hope that's so. I also want to congratulate the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Raisin-Kane, spectacular general, and all of the brilliant military minds involved in this attack. With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago.
Mr. President. Wyatt, right? Yes, sir. Thank you. Sir, I just have to warn you, this might be a bit more hectic than you're used to. I understand. I think we'll be fine.
We've added increased security to our oil and gas pipelines, power grids, refineries, chemical storage tanks.
Mass transit is still on lockdown. Planes and trains. Immigration remains frozen.
Sir, you have to authorize we close the banks immediately.
No, we can't do that. We cannot keep the American people from their money.
48 hours without Bank of America is better than a 48-month depression.
If everyone withdraws their money at the same time, the banks will collapse.
Where are we at with the bombing?
Deputy Director Atwood will be briefing us soon, but we're looking at groups with the skills and resources to do something like this. Hezbollah, Al-Qaeda, North Korea, RGB.
What's this about violence in Michigan?
We're getting reports of flare-ups in Dearborn, police targeting the local Muslim community.
Yeah, but what I want to know is how the terrorists bring explosives into the Capitol building in the first place.
We're working on that. In the meantime, we have to go after everyone we suspect. We go after them, after their families, any way we can.
I'm sorry, are you talking about enhanced interrogation?
They destroyed our Capitol. I'm saying we do whatever we have to do.
Okay, there's a process.
Can I just get a moment?
Everybody, why don't we just focus on one thing at a time? Please, excuse me.
Let's bring in senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy and author of When China Attacks, Colonel Grant Newsham. Colonel, good morning to you. Thank you for hopping on with us. So China has responded to this already. They've condemned this attack, says it damages Washington's credibility and are concerned that the situation may spiral out of control. So that's what they're saying publicly. But behind closed doors, what conversations are really taking place when it comes to decision making in key areas of interest, including potential aggression towards Taiwan?
Well, what they're looking at is this big change that's happened in the United States. Suddenly you have a president who has some backbone and did what needed to be done for the first time in 45 years when he attacked Iran. The Iranians have been at war with us for 45 years, 46 actually. They've killed some thousands of Americans, injured and maimed a lot more, and nobody ever did anything other than to send them pallets of cash and try to negotiate a deal. And here you had someone that attacked them. So China was looking at Taiwan also and thinking, maybe the Americans aren't that serious. And this has raised some doubts in China's calculus when it comes to Taiwan, when they look at what's just happened in Iran. But of course, we have to see how this plays out, because China has been very happy to have the Americans occupied in the Middle East. That means you can't pay as much attention to the Western Pacific, to Taiwan.
That's a great point on how this could go one way or the other. And before this strike, Colonel, there were reports of Chinese cargo flights nearing Iranian airspace. What do you think that was all about?
Well, it could be. There's always things that we don't know about that happened. They were certainly flying things into Russia at the start of the Ukraine war, and the administration hushed it all up. So that is a possibility. But the bigger issue is that China has been the main backer of Iran for decades. And that includes providing a lot of money, a lot of weapons that the Iranians have given to Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis as well. And now China actually buys 90% of Iran's oil. So that's about 20% of Iran's GDP. And that's the real issue here, is the amount of support that China has given to Iran, and used Iran really as a cat's paw, as a proxy to attack America's friends in the region, to cause chaos. And that, to the Chinese perspective, that works to their advantage. Now we have to wonder, are we going to cut off Iran's oil exports and force the Chinese to go buy oil elsewhere?
Well, that's a great question, Colonel, because yesterday Iran's parliament did approve a plan to close the Strait of Hormuz, which would block $1 billion of oil shipments per day. This is Iranian retaliation, but like you said, this would impact China far more than it would the United States. So here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio yesterday. Watch this.
Do you expect Iran to move to close the Strait of Hormuz to try to disrupt oil transportation across the world?
Well, I encourage the Chinese government in Beijing to call them about that, because they heavily depend on the Straits of Hormuz for their oil. If they do that, it'll be another terrible mistake. It's economic suicide for them if they do it. And we retain options to deal with that.
So does China do that? Do they call Iran and say, do not close the Strait of Hormuz?
They might, or they might say just let Chinese ships through, like they've done in the Red Sea with the Houthis. So that is a possibility. But closing off the Straits of Hormuz is actually harder than you might think. It's been tried before, back in the 80s, and the Iranians couldn't pull it off. But that would require more of a commitment by U.S. forces. And we don't seem to have too many allies who are willing to jump in, but maybe we could shame a few into that. So it's easier said than done, but it is a concern. Whether or not China will actually help us or do us any favors, I doubt that. We should give them a choice, really. Do you want to do business with Iran, or do you want to do business with us? You do that, and China just might act a little differently.
Yeah, so yesterday, Vice President J.D. Vance said that China, Russia, and the United States have one thing in common, and it's that neither of these nations want Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Is that true? And if so, do you think President Trump will ever get a private thank you from Russia or China?
I'm not so sure about that, and I'm not so sure the Russians or the Chinese really mind all that much if the Iranians have nuclear weapons. Look, they've allowed the Pakistanis to have them, the North Koreans to have them. Those have all been developed with Chinese assistance. And the Russians have played a role in this as well, in both of those cases. So I don't know that we have that commonality of interest as the administration might think.
Colonel Grant Newsham, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
oil prices are surging, as we've been talking about, on the heels of these strikes by Israel. Joining us now, Will Kennedy. He's Bloomberg's senior executive editor for energy and commodities. You are seeing that Brent crude rise hold to a large degree. Ultimately, we talked a lot about the White House's response, but investors, of course, the world is watching for Iran's response. How might the oil markets respond based on what will happen over the weekend and into next week?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Sonali. Traders are going to be really looking to see what Iran does next. And key is the Strait of Hormuz, this narrow waterway that guards the entrance to the Persian Gulf, over which Iran has significant control, and about a quarter of the world's oil travels through every single day. Now, the great fear of oil markets has been that Iran, in a moment of crisis, would try and close that strait to shipping, and that could see, according to JP Morgan, oil go as high as $120 a barrel. Now, clearly, that's a worst case scenario. We can see from current prices that that's not expected to happen right now, but I do think there are significant risks to shipping, that we may see a more low-level campaign to put pressure on the global economy from Iran by harassing shipping in and out of the Gulf, making tankers reluctant to go in, forcing up shipping rates, perhaps causing a shortage of tankers. These are the kind of risks that people will be looking for as they try and price crude into next week. It's also important to note that traders are buying protection against worst case scenarios. We've seen a lot of activity, people buying call options out of the money just to give them that protection against real escalation here.
Mr. Ambassador.
Mr. President.
Please.
Thank you. Please, allow me to begin by extending to you and the American people my country's most sincere sympathies on this horrific tragedy. If there is anything our people can do in response to this tremendous act of cowardice, rest assured we will do it.
I appreciate that. You can begin by removing your destroyers from the Strait of Hormuz.
Mr. President, excuse me, but I believe you have been misinformed.
Is that a fact?
Yes, we have moved no such destroyers into the Strait of Hormuz.
My Defense Department has wargamed this out. They're waiting for me to give them the green light, which I assure you I will do, unless you pull your destroyers back to Bandar Abbas within the next 3 hours.
Mr. President,
Mr. Ambassador, you may not know much about me. But what you should know is that I'm about as straight a shooter as you're going to find in Washington. So you should believe me when I tell you that I do not want, as my first act as Commander-in-Chief, to attack Iran. But as both of us know, it's not always up to us how history plays itself out. Now, I have chosen to believe that your country is not playing on our emotions tonight, but nevertheless, you will feel the full impact of them if you do not comply with my demands. Mr. Ambassador, dock your destroyers. Or the lead story on the morning news will not be about the attack on our capital, but the devastating attack on yours. Please, Mr. Ambassador, let's not get off on the wrong foot here tonight.
Mr. President, I will speak with my government.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Mr. Ambassador, this way.
Mr. Ambassador, 3 hours.
The United States has moved 26 warships into position off Israel's coast following Iranian missile strikes. This comes after Israel launched Operation Rising Lion against Iranian nuclear facilities on June 13th. The USS Thomas Hudner, an advanced missile destroyer, leads the naval reinforcement in the eastern Mediterranean. A US official told CBS News, "We successfully intercepted Iranian missiles heading toward Israeli territory." The deployment includes 8 additional destroyers from the 5th and 6th fleets, but there's more to these naval movements than simple defense positioning. The strikes have sent oil prices surging, while US stock futures dropped sharply yesterday. President Trump faces his first major Middle East crisis since returning to office. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth hasn't issued public statements about the deployments yet. The Pentagon maintains operational security around specific naval positions. Sources indicate the Vinson carrier strike group remains in CENTCOM waters. Iran launched Operation True Promise 3 after Israeli strikes hit the Natanz enrichment complex. The exchange killed several Iranian military leaders, according to intelligence reports. Israel's attacks targeted nuclear facilities and command structures across Iran. The USS Thomas Hudner carries Aegis missile defense systems capable of intercepting ballistic threats. These destroyers form an air defense umbrella extending Israel's protective coverage. Each ship can track hundreds of targets simultaneously.
Warning red, weapons tight. And prepare F-35.
Airborne object has been detected. 232, approximately 16,000 yards. What the hell is that?
Iran's Revolutionary Guard used a mock U.S. aircraft carrier in its defense drills for the first time Wednesday. State TV showed footage of missiles being fired at the mock carrier during the Great Prophet 9 drills. The replica carrier was hit with cruise and ballistic missiles, as well as rockets fired from speedboats. The speedboats are armed with short-range cruise missiles, medium-range anti-ship missiles, large-caliber torpedoes, sea mines, heavy machine guns, rocket launchers, and shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles.
USS John C. Stennis arrives today at Port Rashid for a 4-day visit of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Live from the aircraft carrier Captain Greg Dawes.
They want 200 million. It has to be in cash.
I will pay in gold. An eye for an eye, Mr. Dawes! All right, gentlemen, this is not a drill. What's the status?
We have a possible hostile attack.
No. Go back.
hostage we need to save.
And what's going to happen to American shipping interests, especially our oil?
The Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentur of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Moslem Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained to fight to the point of complete physical, moral, spiritual, and economical exhaustion. We shall unleash the Nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, origin of savagery and of the most bloody turmoil. Then, everywhere, the citizens, obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries, will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from that moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an ideal, but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. A bizarre letter indeed. And a red flag may have gone off when you heard the term Nazism, but the term Nazism was known to those in the Illuminati at that time. Will we allow this madness to unfurl unabated, or will we put a halt to it before it's too late?
And there came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth.
I went up the Eagle Tower, and later, I only learned it as Eagle Tower later. I didn't know the name of the tower. When I got to the top of it, there were 8 kind of nobular-looking things aiming 8 different directions, north, south, east, and west, and in between. And I kind of looked at them, and they were in these notches like, where you could fire arrows out from. And I was standing looking out over the island of Anglesey. Standing there when all of a sudden, in this vision, I was shot up into the heavens and looking down on the earth like you would look at a satellite picture. You see it every time you see the weather. It looked somewhat similar, and I had supernatural vision. I looked down and I saw a massive military movement coming out of the Icelandic waters up above Iceland. I couldn't believe my eyes in what I saw. I saw this massive military movement coming out of this area up in here. It came down between, in the Atlantic, down between the United States and Europe. It was marine and air, as you can see the airplanes. This was my first confirmation in the sense from General Walker. General Walker has given me many confirmations. This was my first picture of actually that they had drawn this assault taking place. It shows also the movement coming out of Europe across to take these countries, and NATO command center is right in here. So you're looking at some very, very serious fronts that Russia has been building and has. This massive military movement coming down between the United States and Europe just troubled me as I'm watching it. So then I looked off across at the United States wondering, well, if they're doing that across the Atlantic, what are they doing in the United States? That's too big to just be a maneuver. And I looked down, and as I looked across at the United States, I first saw the eastern seaboard of the Atlantic seaboard, and I looked and I saw these submarines look like they were parked right along our beaches, all the way along the east coast. And what I mean by along the beaches is where the sands, if you fly and look down in the ocean at the clear water of the ocean, you will see the point where the beaches begin, the white sands begin to turn, and it gets darker, and you can see the edge of the beach, so to speak, or the sand that's washed back into the sea. They were parked with their hulls right at the point of where that sand was beginning to discolor and the floor of the ocean was coming through. And I couldn't believe my eyes. I mean, they were all along there. And so I looked, because at that time we lived in Portland, Oregon. So I looked off across toward Portland, Oregon. And I saw these submarines along the Pacific coast. And I began to look all the way down as I looked down in towards San Diego. There they were along our coast. And as I was looking down towards San Diego, all of a sudden I saw motion all across the United States. And these radio towers, it's like they were coming out of the ground and going up into the air, and then they were dotting their lines out like they were broadcasting. And I was made to know that they were sounding the alarm. But as they began to sound the alarm, all of a sudden the broadcasting signals went out and they sprinkled to the ground like dust. And I was totally aware, made totally aware in the vision, that the warning was not getting through. And I shouted in the heavens and I said, "Oh no, Lord, the warning isn't getting through. They won't even know what hit them." And as I said that, all of a sudden, the first missile fired out of a submarine, and it went up and it hit right over New York City. I watched that city literally disintegrate into the atmosphere as that massive explosion took place. I mean, it was gone, folks. There'll be nothing left of that city. Then all of a sudden I looked down along the coast and about where I would say be about Miami, Florida. And I told them down there last night, and they weren't too happy to hear that. And I said, and Miami disappeared. And then all of a sudden, because I was seeing this happen here, I looked away then. So I don't know if there were more explosions took place between those two as far as the coastal area. I didn't see it. My concern was over toward Oregon again because my family was in Portland at that time. As I was looking over toward Portland, I saw another explosion, and it looked like it was in the area of Seattle, Bellevue. That area went up, just like New York and Miami. Then all of a sudden I looked down, and here's another one going off, and it looked like the San Francisco area. Then down about Los Angeles, just about to Los Angeles, and then San Diego. I saw those 5 nuclear-looking explosions. And I tell you, they literally devastated everything. Whatever was in their path, it went into the heavens. In the Russian invasion vision, I saw that massive military. I saw them hitting in on the nation and hitting our coasts and pounding them. And then all of a sudden I was back down on the Eagle Tower looking at a leftward way down into the village, automatic, because that's the position I was looking at, standing in the heavens. And I watched the village. The cars are going. Normal speed. People were walking. Normal. Talking normal. And I thought, and I don't know how long I stood there and watched, thinking, well, are the alarms going to go off at any minute? If this is happening in the United States, they gotta know it. They've got to sound the alarms. If there's that kind of a military going down across the Atlantic now, there's got to be some alarms set off. No alarm went off. So I began to settle in on that understanding, and so I uttered these words. Oh God, if this is not happening, then what will be the sign of it happening and of its time? That was my words standing there. As I spoke those words, these words were spoken very clearly back to me. December the 14th, 1986, when Russia opens her gates and lets the masses go, the free world will occupy themselves with transporting, housing, and caring for the masses, will begin to let their weapons down, and will cry peace and safety, and that's when it will happen.
Listen now to these things, and understand them, O servants of the Lord. Behold the word of the Lord, receive it. Do not disbelieve what the Lord says. Behold, the calamities draw near and are not delayed. Just as a woman with child in the 9th month, when the time of her delivery draws near, has great pains about her womb for 2 or 3 days beforehand, and when the child comes forth from the womb, there will not be a moment's delay. So the calamities will not delay in coming forth upon the earth. and the world will groan and pains will seize it on every side. Hear my words, O my people, prepare for battle, and in the midst of the calamities be like strangers on the earth. Let him that sells be like one who will flee. Let him that buys be like one who will lose. Let him that does business be like one who will not make a profit. And let him that builds a house be like one who will not live in it. Let him that sows be like one who will not reap. So also him that prunes the vines, like one who will not gather the grapes. Them that marry, like those who will have no children, and them that do not marry, like those who are widowed. Because those who labor, labor in vain. For strangers shall gather their fruits, and plunder their goods, and overthrow their houses, and take their children captive. For in captivity and famine they will beget their children. Those who conduct business do it only to be plundered. The more they adorn their cities, their houses and possessions, and their persons, the more angry I will be with them for their sins, says the Lord.
And to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, These things saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth, and no man shutteth, and shutteth, and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Because thou hast kept the word of my patience, I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world to try them that dwell upon the earth. Behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown.
But as the days of Noah were, so likewise shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they did eat and drink, marry, and give in marriage, unto the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew nothing, till the flood came, and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then two shall be in the fields, the one shall be received, and the other shall be refused. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be received, and the other shall be refused. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your master will come.
The sword has been sent upon you, and who is there to turn back? A fire has been sent upon you, and who is there to quench it? Calamities have been sent upon you, and who is there to drive them away? Can one drive off a hungry lion in the forest, or quench a fire in the stubble, once it has begun to burn? Can one turn back an arrow shot by a strong archer? The Lord God sends calamities, and who will drive them away? Fire will go forth from his wrath, and who is there to quench it? He will flash lightning, and who will not be afraid? He will thunder, and who will not be terrified? The Lord will threaten, and who will not be utterly shattered at his presence? The earth and its foundations quake. The sea is churned up from the depths, and its waves and the fish also shall be troubled at the presence of the Lord, and before the glory of his power. For his right hand that bends the bow is strong, and his arrows that he shoots are sharp, and will not miss when they begin to be shot to the ends of the world. Behold, calamities are sent forth, and shall not return until they come over the earth. The fire is kindled, and shall not be put out until it consumes the foundations of the earth. Just as an arrow shot by a mighty archer does not return, so the calamities that are sent upon the earth shall not return. Alas for me, who will deliver me in those days? The beginning of sorrows, when there shall be much lamentation. The beginning of famine, when many shall perish. The beginning of wars, when the powers shall be terrified. The beginning of calamities, when all shall tremble. What shall they do in these circumstances when the calamities come? Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent as scourges for the correction of men. Yet for all this they will not turn from their iniquities, nor be always mindful of the scourges. Behold, provision will be so cheap upon earth that men will imagine that peace is assured for them. And then the calamity shall spring up on the earth. the sword, famine, and great confusion. For many of those who live on the earth shall perish by famine, and those who survive the famine shall die by the sword. And the dead shall be cast out like dung, and there shall be no one to console them. For the earth shall be left desolate, and its cities shall be demolished.
So thou, O son of man, I have set thee a watchman unto the house of Israel.